Okay, we call to order the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee of San Clemente, Wednesday, April 10th. And we've got a couple items before us here today. The first one, the minutes of March 27th, 2024. Anyone?
I read them, they look
comments?
okay to me, so I will move approval.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain, okay. I think it's approved. I'm signing this time, John.
Thank you.
There you go. It's not gonna get by me. Okay, let's move on to item number 2, which is 2A, actually, plaques for historic properties. A request by the San Clemente Historical Society to establish a standardized plaque for installation on local historic properties. Do we have a presentation on this one, Jonathan?
So I'll do a quick highlight of the request, and then we do have a presentation from members of the Historic Society who have brought this proposal in front of us, and they have some exhibits that they'll share. And so the request here has some history, so I added some of that additional context in the staff report for continuity's sake. But the city went through, let me zoom even further back. San Clemente is a certified local government. That's a component that we get certification through the state for regarding historic preservation. And so there's certain reporting requirements, et cetera, that pertain to that certification. And we are required to have a historic preservation ordinance within our city's municipal code, which we do. We received a grant back in 2019-2020 for an analysis of North Beach as a potential historic district. That work was completed, and ultimately the nomination was successful for that district. A side project of that was to take into consideration potential signage related to historic properties, and so the Design Review Subcommittee back in 2020 did take a look at some potential signs as well, and so those are referenced as an attachment within this packet. Ultimately, the recommendation was to move towards a sign similar to the one shown on page 3 of attachment 1, which is similar to the plaque styles used by the National Register. So with that feedback, the Historic Society did some additional research and have talked to some sign designers and fabricators, and looking at what could be potential for a standardized sign to be placed onto historic properties. The majority of those are, of course, privately owned, and so there's a couple of different avenues that these signs could be applied. The first is just by voluntary purchase and installation by the property owners. The Historic Society is going to continue to look and potentially work with the city on other funding options. And then finally, the city does have a Mills Act program, and something of this sort could be incorporated as a condition of approval for any of those properties moving forward that they install one of these designated signs. So those are the different ways that this could be implemented moving forward. The sign itself doesn't require a discretionary action, so this doesn't need to go up to Planning Commission for consideration. Today we're just looking to get your feedback on whether this example, and they'll have some larger versions to look at, is a good fit with the version that was looked at by the subcommittee previously back in 2020. So that's the review of what's in front of us today, and then I'll turn it over to Marianne and her team to talk about how they landed at the design and any additional information.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Marianne Comas, and with the Historical Society in town. Been for 20 odd years, and anyway, just to get it started, I just want to tell you that my husband and I were traveling up at Cambria, and so we were looking at the touristy town and everything. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I only have this one, but it has a building, like I think it's a bank building, or the Bank of America. I'll give you that.
Pass this around.
And so I went back to the Historical Society and said, hey, you guys, we got to do this. We don't have anything on our property, especially the commercial properties. And So the board said, yeah, let's go for it. So we've been working on this for over a year or more. And we came up with all kinds of different, we looked at the round ones, we looked at square ones, we looked at all of the different, around in the community, in different cities and stuff. And we came up with the one, where are you, Lisa? Oh, anyway, we came up with one that's sort of looks like this. And we feel that that kind of gives a, yeah, there she goes. It gives us the idea of what Subcommittee is all about with the little curve for the architecture here in the town. And anyway, we've been working on it. We want to have two sizes, one for the residential properties, the smaller one, and then we would like to go with the bigger one for the buildings that are commercial. I already have the one, the owner of this property is interested in putting a plaque on his property. And so if we could get all three of that corner there on Del Mar and El Camino Real would be wonderful, but we need the city's help on the commercial properties. The residential is no big deal, so, but it's just the commercial ones. And I think it's really important that we show these buildings off and have some kind of signage. So that I'm gonna give it to Lisa, and she's gonna tell you whatever she's put together.
Well, I'll make it quick because we've got quite a few people here, but I'm Lisa Spinelli. I also did the weather vane on the old Hanson Beach Club. And I've done other plaques for other things in town, but these are bronze, and we've gone through many concepts already, and this is the one that we've come up with, and the reason is because my goal was to use elements that are architectural elements that would represent San Clemente and the arch of all the Ole Hanson houses and all the buildings that are the Spanish Revival style that we have in town have this arch, and so that's why I built this design. I wanted it to be simple. These are fairly standard sizes. Now this one on the left, we also did, and also I have also done upper and lower case and caps, and we had Ole Hanson historic buildings done, and now we've come up with this one because it seems to be the simplest. It would show from the street, and it would the plaques would be a nice element that would add to the same beauty that our town has and that the Historical Society has been known for, keeping the preservation and the beauty of this town. And I think that this would be a nice additional piece that people would recognize on all the houses. This is the other side. We did this to begin with, this size, and this is all caps. But all that can be changed. We can still do, modifications to the style and the fonts too. I did a lot of studying of the fonts that were reminiscent of the 20s, and because we wanted them to be in keeping with the architecture and the style. So this one was slightly different because it's all cap, but that's another size that would work. And we found that this size was kind of better on those little old Ole Hanson. This is the size that would be on the larger buildings, not just commercial, larger buildings. I also have, I've taken this photo of one of these that would be on one of the Ole Hanson houses, and I guess you can pass that around. And I wanted to remind you that we also do those plaques, and we do the landscapes on Del Mar, the wonderful project that's down on Del Mar, the rest areas, and we've been doing those plaques and restoring those, and so just so that you have an idea of some of the stuff the Historical Society also does that has to do with plaques. And then this is the Ole Hanson Beach Club. Now we did a plaque when we had the weather vane on the Ole Hanson Beach Club. We did a plaque that says Ole Hanson Beach Club built, and because it didn't say when it was built, and none of the buildings have said that. So it seemed like a nice time to put that. So we did put built in 1928 weather vane replica, funded by the Women's Club and the Historical Society. this is it's kind of become a little weathered. In fact, that's another thing. If we put a big sign on the beach club now instead, we can maybe replace it. The size can be varied because these aren't done as bronze castings anymore. These are done all digital, all, cut, just all cut with routers or lasers. So that's that. And this is just to show you the beach, how this looks on the beach club. So also I'd like to, we have got you mentioned, Jonathan, you wanted to know about the installation. So I did redo these and I have these done. We can pass those around. That has all the specs for the way the anchors are and the way they can be attached. So if there's any question, I just want to make sure you all see how many Historical Society people are here. Raise your hands if you're a Historical Society. See? This is all of us. We're here to hopefully we can have this project go in a forward direction. We haven't really discussed that.
I just want to say one
money,
more thing, that we have several commercial buildings that are on the National Historic list. And the Easley building is one of them. And and the Subcommittee Hotel is another one. And so those are really important things to show that they are historic, that it's on the books in the United States. So these are things that we need to show and have our, whatever. So that's my thing.
And I'd like to just quickly introduce, first of all, you know Larry pretty well. Everybody knows him. He was the president. Now our president is Katie Potts.
Hi.
And you have a couple of things you want to say.
I just want to say one thing with regards to the design. It's something Lisa is still maybe changing a little bit. We did become aware about a month ago that a plaque had been installed on Del Mar by Ole Hansen and Virgil Westbrook in honor of Wilmer Hershey, who passed away very young and in the middle of being a key architect in our early buildings in San Clemente. I believe he passed away before 1930. So that plaque stayed on Del Mar for a really long time, and in the 1960s that area was demolished, maybe for some new building. The plaque went back to his family and it now resides with the granddaughter, and we've been in contact with her. She's going to send us the plaque back. Hopefully we can put it back up where it belongs, and that'll be a design that we can use to compare to our design and make sure that they're in harmony with each other.
Well, any questions? We're just beginning this whole task. Yeah.
So I'm a late addition to the
Introduce
committee,
yourself.
and just a quick couple things about why this is in front of you is that the idea is to have a standard that these properties, or people who are driving by, will recognize that this is identified with a historical property. Currently, there are a couple of different styles that are in the city, and so adopting a standard seems appropriate so that as you're driving by these residences or buildings, you would know, oh, that means that this is a historic property. And so this is kind of the reason for that this is in front of you. And then secondarily to that, I think also is that with the 100-year anniversary of our city coming up, being able to identify a number of those buildings and really promote that seems appropriate coming up on the 100-year anniversary. So the idea is to get those two things to happen a little more quickly so we could begin the idea of getting these onto the building so that that could be achieved.
This is for you, Jonathan. So, okay, that's it. We don't have any questions. We'll see what happens with our next rendition.
Well, we might have some questions.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one thing. The city of Dana Point gives a plaque when you get on the Mills Act. Their city provided us. So if there's any way we could get grant funding or something to either defer the cost completely or
Or we would
subsidize
give you a
it,
discount.
that would be great.
I mean, what is the
Work on that.
cost?
It's around $500 for the homeowner ones.
For the small one.
Yeah.
So what's the material?
It's bronze.
Well, okay, so it's not, you said it's not embossed.
This is what City of Dana Point has. And by the way, because of the Mills Act, their city funded this project. So that's the part we can fine tune is what the money and how we're gonna deal with this, but at least it's a nice start, and if anybody, we'll see about this other idea that's come up. So did you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, you can go.
I just want to make sure you get your question in.
Oh, okay. So the beach club one I noticed was recessed into the plaster. Is that something you're going
It's
to
not
try?
really recessed. In fact, it's also been kind of weathered. In fact, I'm trying to get the plaque company maybe to even replace it because it's gotten more weathered. It really gets a lot of salt down there. So no, it's not recessed. It sits on it, just like the ones on Landmark on Del Mar. Whoever the city guy is who puts those up, he's pretty used to installing those. They've been installing them. They have those little anchors that are welded on the back that go into the stucco. But you can also have them drilled and they can be attached. So that's a light. You're concerned about them being recessed, but that's just probably the lighting that made it look like that.
Okay, so who decides or how is it decided, where they go on any particular location?
Well, we have a list, a really, really good, extensive list of all the buildings that are our historic buildings. And we have the houses and the buildings and the Mills Act ones, and Larry has put this together in the past, and we've been trying to do this for several years, and then Mary Ann has a list, and we have Excel.
Yeah, I'm not asking which buildings.
Do you mean like where on the
Where
building?
on the building?
Well, that has to be done, each one has to be the sweet spot, I think, as far as my concern is. That has to be,
So it's the historic society that decides where it goes on the
and
building.
the owner, and the owner of the
In
building.
conjunction
And I
with
think
the
that's where you go around, just like when you design signage for anything, you go to wherever the visibles are, and you make sure you're putting it in the exact right spot for the architecture of the building and for the visibility of the onlooker. And I guess that's it.
I mean,
You can be on
ultimately,
that
it's-
committee, maybe.
Ultimately, it's private property,
Yeah.
so, but encouraging them to put it in an area, I think would be appropriate.
Well, I'm sure anybody that wants to have it would want it to be seen
From the
as
street.
well. Is there a picture of this one that you say was?
We asked the granddaughter for it. She's gonna get
We're
into a
waiting
storage
for that. We
unit
thought
and
we'd
get it.
have it by today. We
Yeah.
don't have it.
But she lives
We
in
just
LA,
found out
so
about it.
we expect to get it.
New information.
Yeah, that seems like kind of a critical
Yeah, I
element
agree.
here.
I agree. What is our role here today? What are we doing? Are we approving something? Are we information only? Are we?
Yeah, predominantly information only, but certainly open to taking direction on a couple of things. One, material and design broadly, because I do agree. I think that consistency is something that we want to look at moving forward, and so we'd encourage people to, have, if they're a historic residence, here's your standard type. Here's how you go about getting that plaque, so it's consistent sourcing of these plaques, so that we don't have different types all over the city. But there's not a discretionary action required to install these. This would fall very cleanly under like a staff determination to highlight an existing historic property. It doesn't change the designation of those properties or anything of that sort. It's a feather in the cap.
Okay. So what about the size? Because I mean, is the size defined, or should it be? I think it should be.
Yeah. These are pretty common sizes. I've gone to several different manufacturers too, and these are pretty typical sizes of them. Even the one in Dana Point, I think, is only like 8 inches by 8 inches. This is 10 inches by 10 inches. This is 12 by 15.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
proposing, just to answer this question, you're proposing two sizes. Those are the two sizes you're proposing.
Yeah, but
Yes.
because of the fact that we're in the digital age, let's say somebody's building really required it to be a slightly different, very slightly different, so it wouldn't be recognizable, yet it would be more in keeping with that particular building. We can adjust it a little bit.
Yeah,
For
my
that
sug-
purpose.
And I understand that. Let's say you had 6 architects and they were going to, shrink off the plaque or whatever. But my suggestion would be to define the sizes, because there's nowhere in the report, nowhere in your board, it says 10 inches by 10 inches, 12 by 15, whatever. So define, these are the 2 standard sizes with exceptions allowed based on need or whatever.
I thought I put it on the spec sheet.
You did. You did.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's on the spec sheet.
Um,
The newer one too. I made sure it was on the newer one too. Just so we have a starting point, because this is all,
Yep.
everything is adjustable at this point.
Have you guys considered the year, the number? Because someone that's not thinking about it might perceive that to be an address.
I thought of that too. We had built. I have.
I like that data point when it says built in.
Yeah, I have built on
That's
several.
the one in our report
historic
has
ones.
the word built on it.
Yeah.
Your examples don't include that.
We thought it was pretty, we discussed that, and we can easily put built. I had built on.
You have it here.
Small letters, yeah. It doesn't say built, right?
Yeah.
There, yeah. And then we took it off, because I also made this all lowercase, because it seemed to read better from a distance, even though the idea of caps and upper and lower and caps kind of is a nice thing. I had them combined, but this was more powerful. But it's only types, and this font is very reminiscent of that period. And I know that the whole city's being signed right now by all these big signs for parks and everything else, and that's a different kind of look. And I don't know, I think they're kind of trying to exemplify wave that's like a Hepple-white curve, and to me the city is really all about this arch, and the Ole Hansen buildings, and they have, sans serif, we could do that, but I thought this was a good starting point. So if there's any adjustment to that?
If you're looking for feedback, are you done, Scott?
No.
Okay, keep going.
Well, my 2 cents would be built, because the
Yeah.
number by itself doesn't
Yeah.
immediately scream out what that is or means.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which Commissioner Camp touched on, is
So I put built very small here on this one, but notice this upper caps and upper and lower case, so there's a combination. But I did put built
Okay.
very small, but then we had to talk about it. We took it off, so we can put it back on.
Well, look, it's just my opinion. I'd be curious what others, I don't want to drive the bus on this thing.
No, but that's a good point.
The other thing that, you brought up this truly historic plaque. So it would seem to make sense to get your hands on that before you finalize the
Yeah.
design.
Yeah, for sure. That's our intention.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, I'm done.
You're done.
Yes.
See, this was
Okay.
the Bartlett building, here, we did that. And I've always enjoyed, when I go back east and stuff, to enjoy reading a little story. So I kind of did this as one of my first attempts at the larger buildings, because I think for people who are visiting, the tourists like to go read a little something. So that's another idea.
But we had talked about that also, about having a cube, and you call it a cube.
QR code?
Yeah, on the bottom,
Yeah.
where somebody can walk by and just find it on their phone, and had the whole history of the property.
I think the reason why you're here is to just get feedback, right? Because you want to standardize this.
Well, I think it's probably what the city.
I think you absolutely should standardize it, because otherwise you're gonna confuse people.
Right.
And I would give you guys this feedback. One, you guys are experts.
Excuse me.
You're experts. You know about these buildings. You look at the sign, you get it.
Right,
You have to take yourself away from that.
right,
You're a tourist. You don't know anything about Subcommittee.
right,
You look at the sign. What are you gonna get from the sign?
right.
You understand, oh, it's significant because of these architects, and we know who Ole Hansen is. I'm from out of town, I don't know anything. So I like the idea of trying to standardize on something. So I would bifurcate and standardize. So for example, if you have a building that's just historic and that's it, okay. But if it's a landmark, if it has some designation, you should come up with something that is a standard. If it has a landmark, it looks like this. We're going to use this language. We're going to call it this. We're going to configure the sign like this every single time.
Exactly.
If it's a historic resource, we're going to do it this way. We're going to use these words so that an individual can walk up and go, oh, that's a landmark. Oh, that's a historic. That's registered on the historical this. You have to come up with all your categories and come up with a sign for every category and say, this is the standard sign for this category. And when this building meets that criteria, it gets this sign. Because I think what I'm feeling from you guys is, You're trying to do the right thing, but it's sort of a soup here instead of a process. If it's this, then that. If it's this, then that. That's what I think you should be more process oriented and say, okay, we've got all of our buildings in different categories. For this category, we're going to call it this, landmark building, whatever. You're going to define it, and then that's what that gets. And you're going to decide what you're going to include on that. My feedback is I like the simple approach that you have here in this book where it says built, like Scott was saying. I love the arch, I love the colors, I love all that. This is great. I would stay with this sign.
The shape.
The shape, even the colors. The colors matter,
Right.
right? So I think, and the material matters, like the bronze. This is great. I would stop messing around with this. This is good. And now say, okay, how do we do this for landmarks? How do we do this for this? How do we do this for that?
The thing is that the landmarks are all historic. I mean, we have a list of all the landmarks, basically.
Yep.
But a lot of people don't know that. I mean, they don't know about this.
They don't know the difference between this or that.
Right.
And that's what a sign should do.
Right.
Okay.
Right, that's what.
That's the purpose of the sign, is to say, oh, this is a landmark. And then if someone doesn't know what that means, they can Google that and they'll find out. So that's why I think you're experts. You look at it, you know this stuff. The feedback I'm trying to give you is, the experts are in this room. Just about 90% of everyone else that's going to look at that sign is not clueless. They don't know. So you need to standardize on if it's this status, we're going to use this language to identify it. If it's this status, we're going to use this language so people can see that rhythm around town. And then if you want to do the story, I think that's the big decision you have to make. Are you going to have 2 plaques or 1 plaque, one bigger plaque?
Well, they just use a cue card, which they can plug into on their phone.
Yeah.
The story could be of that.
My feeling on that is,
Yeah.
I don't know, if you say today, well, we'll just put everything on a USB card, that'll work. Put it in the time capsule, that'll work. No, not necessarily. USB cards may not work in 5 years from now.
Yeah.
QR cards may not work in 10 years from now. Maybe something completely different.
Well,
And the
that's
readers
why
may not even work anymore.
we wouldn't want it on the plaque.
No, I think, and what you're doing is you're taking something that's timeless like the building and you're putting something modern on it, and that's not timeless and can be obsolete.
Right.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, that's why we haven't done that, but the point is that if we can agree on maybe eventually, after we see this, that the shape, the color, the
I think what I'm trying to say
can always
is stick
be
with the
changed.
shape, stick with this color,
Yeah.
it's great.
And then we
Thank
can
you.
put, the
And the
type
font.
would be.
That's what I'm trying to say.
The type would be the font,
Yeah.
and then we have that, maybe we have that, and so we can
The
always
font you have
adjust
right
the
there,
rating.
this is great. It's very clear, it's very nice.
Thank you.
My feedback is I think you need 3 signs. The
That
2
makes
that you
sense.
have, right? The 3rd sign is if you want to have the story. And then it's a longer sign. Obviously, that would be on bigger buildings that are significant and would allow for the size of a bigger sign that has the exact same stuff as you have there. That's your standard. But then on ones that have a story, you could just have a longer sign and put the story on the bottom.
Exactly, I agree, and then if we have one that has to be super short, we do the super short one, which we started with, that kind of thing. So at least we have the same look.
Yeah.
The same look, whether it has historic, because we even started doing Ole Hansen Historic Home. But then we realized, who's gonna know who Ole Hansen is? Really what we need is San Clemente Historic Building. And so we've
yes.
kind of played around, so we're open to that, and you could be on the committee.
That's what I like when I say, San Clemente Historic Building, that's perfect wording, perfect.
Yeah, okay, so we're still evolving.
Yeah.
So I appreciate.
And
your
last bit of
feedback.
feedback is, when you walk around town, this is just a personal pet peeve. I get angry when I see commercials on the sign. Oh, it's fun to buy the garden club. Oh, so-and-so, it's on Pure Pride signs, it's all over town. Who cares? If you care about this city and you're gonna donate it, you need to be selfless. You don't need your name on that.
Right.
This is not for fundraising. This is for,
You mean the San Clemente Historical Society that I put originally?
shouldn't have that on there.
Well, because it was our project, and then we
Yeah.
realized, no, it's really bigger than
This
that.
is a
It's
city,
Subcommittee.
this is a
Right.
standalone, to say this is a city significant building. And if we have to, if the city pays, cool. If they don't, and we have to do fundraisers, this is not, we don't put people, we shouldn't put people's names on it, organization's name on it. It should be clean of all of
It's the
that.
city.
That's right.
So they know they're in the city, and then it's all these
That's
beautiful
right.
buildings.
That's right. That's my feedback.
Architects on there are okay.
Yeah, that's not a commercial. That's part of the
Okay,
building.
I'm just trying to get what's,
The architect is
font's
important.
good.
Or if something
Size.
The
else.
font is great.
Okay.
Size is great.
Or
We don't-
In my
something else.
opinion.
No, and we don't have any, on the one that's 1926 right there.
Yeah, but you need to say built so that
Built,
people get
right.
that it's not the address.
So it's pretty good, except add built.
Yeah, at the top.
So we're going in a forward direction.
Yes, you're great.
That's
You're
great.
right on it. You're over the
That's
target.
I do have one other thought, which is, and you kind of touched on it earlier, and I had made a note, but standardized kind of installation method or location, which I understand that each property needs to be, individually considered, but, like, if it's on a home, you can't read that from 50 feet away if the home's back on a lot. So you want people coming up in your front yard to read the little plaque, or do you put it on a pedestal out by the street, or what do you do? I think that there needs to be some thought in that. I mean, if I owned a home that was 50 feet back from the street, I wouldn't want people running up my front yard to read the little plaque and go, okay, cool, and then,
Well, and then that gets, then you're talking about a monument, possibly, because you don't want to put it, you don't want to put it on a.
Or one of
They're
those
very
stalks,
close
they have
to
some
the-
very
I'm aware of
nice
some that are
stands
further
that
back,
they have these
including-
days for that. I mean, when you're-
Most of the oldies are only 20 feet back.
But most of the
Yeah,
houses
like-
well,
have.
how far back
One
is
we're
the
looking at
Goldschmidt
today
house?
is way back.
Yeah,
They have a plaque, so they're not actually on our list.
but how far back is their house?
Yeah, but the garage is.
Yeah, you're.
How far back is your house, Paul?
Well, it's back a ways, but the
It's got a
garage is
garage.
right in the front, so
You
we're
put it
going
on
the
the wall.
garage.
Well, exactly, but what if you?
It's probably 30 feet.
Oh, it's more than
Yes,
that.
not as far as some
It's
of
more
them.
than that.
Yeah, so.
Well, I think that's good input,
Yeah.
Some
I mean,
of
they
it's
need to
35
really.
feet, because the garage is
And the
17.
Goldschmidt house, you can't see, we wouldn't see it from the street, really.
And the homeowner has to
You
agree
could.
anyway.
Conceivably,
So
you
if
could
they don't
put
want
it on a
people
stand,
walking on
they've got nice stands.
This
for
property, then
glass.
they're probably not gonna get a plaque.
I'm just
You go
saying you
back
could
east
just
or
think about
even
it.
in Europe,
Oh, yeah,
all
no, we have to
houses have
consider
them
each
on.
one every
Yeah.
time. And
So-
Romeo has,
so then-
I grew up
then-
and have a say.
Scott, real quick. So then a question comes up, because earlier in our conversation with some of staff, there was a question about approval process, a permitting process, if you will, for putting this on a building. So, while we don't want to bog down the staff with a bunch of permits for historical properties, at the same time, there could be some sort of oversight into how this gets done, so that it's not some random, we're gonna put it in some weird spot that it shouldn't be. So there is an opportunity for that to happen. We just can work potentially with them on how that happens.
Right.
Well, there's a couple things we're doing here. This is a legacy project, so it needs to be given appropriate consideration.
Yes.
Exactly.
These plaques are gonna go there, they're gonna be there, for some length of time. Generally, I agree with your input. My concern with looking at the sign, it's a graphic design issue as well as a legacy thing. I like the shape of the sign, I like the colors. I think it's very sort of timeless. The thing I always do is I squint my eyes to look at an image like that. And when you do that, nothing pops out. All the text reads as it's the same size, it's all symmetrical. And if you look, for instance, at the Dana Point one, it's very simple. There's nothing sort of distracting about it. So, my suggestion would be there needs to be some hierarchy, whether it's with the size of the text, the type of the text. Some of it's all caps, for instance, the most important.
I can't
Part of
go
it.
That direction. So-
There should be, and hey, I'm an architect, I'd love to have my name on a plaque, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think,
interesting.
I'm kind of a geek. Whenever I see a plaque, I go read the
Me
whole
too,
thing.
me too,
But most people don't.
Yeah.
I know this because when I travel with people,
me too.
they're always waiting on me. Say, come on, let's get going. So I don't think that all that information, I mean, the QR code, I don't know how that, I like your idea of having a separate sign that has that information. So you don't have to look at it, but there's almost like a logo element to it. I mean, I like the arch, but I think you really need to think about simplifying it
Yeah,
dramatically and giving it some hierarchy. So you look at it, you see built 1926, this San Clemente Historic, whatever. That's all you really need to
Even
see.
more simplified, you're saying.
Yes,
Because I
Yes.
grew up in a 1752 house in Connecticut, actually, so I really appreciate plaques. That's why I thought
yeah.
I'd
Oh, we
get
like
on
it.
board with Mary Ann's been bugging
You're saying
me,
like
but
either
I'll
get
and
rid of
if
the
you put
architect.
the
name or
architects
straight
on
it.
there, they should be
Smaller
fine
font.
print.
Okay, that's a good
I
thing.
agree.
That's a very adjustable thing.
Yeah.
So
I like
that's
that
the
idea
next,
too.
the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
rendition. The next rendition would be that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So the architect's name smaller, because I had it smaller when I used all caps, but all caps, we're getting used to it because of the internet. Caps are a big deal, but really, they're not readable. All
No.
caps are not readable, and that's why Mary Ann had we had lots of examples from all over the country, and the ones that really read the most actually were up in lowercase,
For
So,
sure.
and I did a lot of tracking, as you can tell, and kerning and all that
Oh, yeah,
stuff.
no,
to
it's-
try to
you
get
did a lot
the
of
router.
work.
Remember, the router has to go through there too.
Like, I look at that sign, if I'm like Cameron says, from out of town. I don't care about Ole Hanson's office. I don't know who Ole Hanson is. The architects, why are there three of them?
Right.
I'm sure they're all three involved in it. But to me, the most important thing is the date and San Clemente Historic Building.
Yeah.
That's really all you need.
Very
Yeah,
good.
that's right.
Good point. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Again, there's no hierarchy.
Yeah,
Even
the
though-
hierarchy is a really good point.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah,
I agree.
No, that's a good point, because this is for the next concept, and we're open to
So,
that,
yeah,
that's
so
why we're here.
Yeah,
Yes.
what I'm trying
No,
to.
you're not allowed
yeah.
to talk.
Well, remember,
Come on,
this
one more
is-
thing.
This
Well,
is
if
not
it's
a
Elm
cookie
and
cutter
National
design from
Register
a plaque
versus it's just a historic
There's no
house.
Yeah, we think you guys have done great work.
I custom
It's just
designed
got to
it
simplify.
If it's
That's
on the
the big
register,
so
it's
that it
just
wouldn't
on
look
there.
like
It's not
any
that
other
it's just historic. It's a-
So really, the last thing I was going to say was
Because that's all
just
people care about.
that this also serves a purpose to there's a little bit of confusion, partly because maybe you guys have done such a great job of having buildings that look like they might be historical throughout the city to further identify the actual
The actual
historical
one,
buildings
custom
from
design.
the ones that are not historical
Sure.
that are throughout the city.
Yeah.
I think is appropriate, especially as we come up to this 100-year anniversary.
Sure.
Yeah, by the way, I haven't done such a great job. I've only been here 2 years. Those before
Okay,
me.
well, we did count.
Those before me.
If Bart was here, we would let him take that.
Yeah,
credit.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Gothic arch rather than this, Renaissance arch with it. So at least we're kind of in keeping with the style, the architectural style. We're not a cookie cutter from, people can just buy them right from companies that are all the same. So at least we have something custom for a little custom city.
Thank you.
Very
Yeah,
good.
see,
Thank you.
one quick final word. We are the historical society, and the buildings are historic.
So what we picking on?
Sorry about that, Larry. Did I misspeak on that?
There's a difference.
On that? I appreciate
This
that.
is being.
And I do apologize if I misspoke.
Notice I didn't say my name.
I did.
Okay, so hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah,
In terms of
in
input?
summarizing the input, I had noted that one of the primary goals is going to be to standardize the plaque style, and so I think the target for the Historical Society would be really to produce a guidebook essentially that says that provides a clear pathway for, depending on your property type, this is the sign type, style, materials, dimensions. Here's how you go about procuring that, and upon further consideration, maybe some recommendations on a hierarchy of where those signs are recommended to be placed on a property, understanding that it is private property, so those homeowners will still have final say on that item, and to make some adjustments to the font sizing to primarily emphasize the date and the San Clemente historic nature of the property, and looking at reducing the font size with the architects. So those are some of the notes that'll be incorporated into the minutes, and then I think the long term would be looking to have a guide. So to that point, the city can sign off on a guide style so that there's not individual property owners looking to come get individual permits from the city. There's just a standardized process where they can go about and do that on their own.
Sounds good. Anything else you'd add to that?
Nope, sounds great.
So how would someone, who's gonna order these and then get them manufactured? Is the Historical Society gonna do that? Or is the city, who's the keeper of getting the sign?
At this point, the Historic Society would take the lead on that because
Okay.
funding hasn't been identified. If that changes and the city takes on the funding, then those orders would likely flow through a city process.
Okay.
But at this point, I think that anyone who's interested should contact the Historical Society.
Yeah, because I think if they come up with the program and you come up with, you get it all worked out, then the cost, I don't see any reason why you can't go to the owner of the building and say, you're eligible to get one of these signs. You fit this sign. If you want it, you can order it through us. And here's the cost of it. And then you tack on your own handling fee to make sure you're whole, right? That's how I envision it working then. And then the funding is self-funded. People who own the building can put it, because they're going to have to agree to put their, so they should pay
We've
for it.
already had a lot of calls. People are very anxious to.
Yeah, so they can pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what these calls were about. They
Yeah.
know that, yeah.
Yeah.
But the only thing is the commercial properties is another story. I don't know, some of them are on a side, and so, which I think is important.
Well, it's up to you guys to mount your campaign to convince them. Yeah.
Calls our sales.
Okay, well, let's move on to item 2B, I think. Cultural Heritage Permit 23-318, the Moses Residence at 239 Avenida La Cuesta, which we reviewed, I guess, when was it? Back in,
February
February
14th.
14th.
wow, it's been a long time already.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have a
Yeah, I'll do a quick overview of this item and then just a general announcement. Typically, when we have items, we will try to share images on our screen. We're having technical difficulties today, so I had some additional printouts of the packet made. So if anybody wants, I have a few of those available up here that you can take a look at while we talk about this item. So this is the second review of the Moses Residence, which is a request to construct a two-story single-family residence that's on a vacant lot between two properties that are on the city's local register of historic places. One of them is on the National Register. And so within the packet, there's very similar information as what was submitted in the initial review, identifying lot size, 27,000 square feet, etc., things of that nature, as well as the backgrounds of those two historic properties that are adjacent. The main component that's different is on page 3 of the packet. That identifies the basic information or recommendations from design review subcommittee at the first review. So among those were recommendations to take into consideration the placement of rooftop equipment and considering how that could be visually mitigated. There was also comments to the effect of inquiring whether or not the property foundation could be shifted rearward on this lot. And then finally, and the most common comment from that review was a desire for more context of this property. So between the two properties, La Cuesta does have a significant grade to it, and so having more sense of what are those elevations and how does the massing of this project sit in between those two. So those are the primary requests. So the applicant has returned with the same plans, however, with responses to those comments. And so the attachment 2 in your packet is going to be the written response to comments, and I'll let the architect do an overview of that item. And then following that in attachment 3 are some of the expanded visualization items to provide additional context of this property in context with its neighboring historic properties. So that concludes the staff presentation, but I think that it would be good to have Dustin do a review of his attachment 2. Again, that's the responses to that preliminary meeting.
Okay, so no design changes at all.
Not at this time, no.
Okay. All right, Dustin?
Good to see everyone again.
Likewise.
So just kind of, I think, in going back to kind of your initial comment was kind of, hey, like we're here to provide feedback on the view of this property and its impact on the 2 historic homes. So taking that into consideration, kind of this presentation is geared towards that. It's, hey, what is this building and how is it impacting the 2 historic homes on either side of it? So really isolating it to that and then bringing up and addressing some of the concerns that were brought up in that previous meeting just with the nature of the historic home and the view impact of that particular window that everyone is concerned about right now. So basically you'll see on that first kind of slide, it's, on the first page that you have there, it shows you the 2 historic homes on either side of the proposed property. This kind of just, this is just in conjunction with kind of the photo key elements. So basically, I know a large concern was with when you're experiencing the window, what the window is, how you're experiencing the window, and everyone is concerned with experiencing the window on the orange dot. The orange dot is at the intersection. Currently, we have not pushed the building back. We have not done anything to the location of it based on from the first presentation. You will not have a clear and complete view of that window from that orange dot. Again, the design was conceived of and taken from the initial sight line from the Romney residence and the design from the previous approved home, which drew that sight line where that red line is, so where the blue line is. So the blue line was one of our primary design constraints in designing the home, and you can see we have respected the view line that was established by this committee and by the next by the committee to respect the view of that window. So that blue line represents the line that was previously approved and the line that we designed this building to. The red line represents the expectation that they want our building to adhere to, which I think is unrealistic. I think you will have a clear view of that window where you are at the green dots, but I'm not, and again, the point of this was to bring to light and give you context to it. So I'm not going to try and shade the fact that you're going to experience the window. There will be a disruption at the intersection, but again, I don't think it's necessary to stand at an intersection and look up at that window. So there will be a view disruptance of that window from an intersection. At that green dot is where you will have a clear view of that window.
So just real quickly for clarification, so the orange or the red line, is it, because when we met with you guys last time, we spoke about a previous approval of a setback that was further back from where.
So that the blue line represents the
Previous approval.
The previous approval, and that's what we have designed to. So
the planning commission?
correct.
There's a graphic, there's a different one that shows the footprint of the previously approved design.
Right at the end, you'll see the
Okay.
overlay.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no,
Yeah,
you're
just to
fine.
help you see.
Right at the end, that orange represents the Romney residence that was previously approved. The orange represents the larger, because again, the comments were brought up that this is a excessively large home. This lower floor plan is ours. The previous design was at 3,174 square feet, the approved Romney residence. Our first floor level is at 2,517. So it actually equaled a building that is 600 square foot smaller than the previously approved. And you'll see that visual line drawn from the historic home above. That is the previously approved design line from the Romney residence and the one before that. So that was the line that, again, we wanted to respect what was previously approved, what had run through this committee already, and that was the designed line that we designed the home to.
Okay, so that's that black line there, I guess, on this.
On that one, exactly, which is
same as the
blue line on that one, correct. So the point of that red line is to illustrate if if you were to want to experience the building and go and stand in that intersection, then that red line would be the line that you would have to draw to experience the building from standing in the intersection or whilst driving a car. Again, which I think we have designed to what was previously approved. So this also highlights the fact that the yellow area is the area that is, in between, obviously off that blue line, is the area that Moses is already giving up of their lot in respect of that historic home. The purple on the north side illustrates more of a question to why was that home not held to the same design criteria and the experience from that intersection. If it is to experience views from intersections, why was that intersection not thought about?
So there is a setback though,
As far as?
building setback.
Correct. So we sit currently at 45 feet at its closest point, and the current building setback is only 20 feet as far as building code goes.
All right, so you can't really count the 20 feet in the yellow zone.
No. But okay, I see what
You're
you're
not
saying.
giving up setback area.
No.
Okay.
But again, the purple just illustrates kind of the amount that home sits in view above of the other one.
By comparison.
Correct. So that's kind of that slide. The next one runs down to the next sheet. Is just kind of.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Because your report's a good one. So you've got a 20-foot setback here. So, but the house is set back from that point already 25 feet plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just responding to his comment that you've given up this whole yellow
True.
zone when you really
Yeah.
haven't, since that's in the setback.
But definitely made a conscious decision to go back further than the setback.
Understood.
If there was no historic home here, then we could build to the front. So it's just been a deliberate decision to move it considerably back.
Yeah, setback is 20 feet,
Correct.
and you're at 45.
Correct. At its closest. At its closest. Yeah. So at that point where it
What you're
pinches.
saying is 25 feet is what you're saying.
Giving up.
Would be if I was a normal homeowner and didn't
You would have
have.
consumed that 25
Of
feet.
course, because that's the highest point of the property.
And what we talk about later is like that's the value property, right? That is effectively where you're getting your best ocean views. And again, I bring it up in that report that I submitted that is effectively land value, right? Most homes sell homes on ocean views, so it
Yeah,
is.
but you were aware when you bought the
Of
property
course.
that it was in
But I
a,
was aware from meeting with the city planner, David Carrillo, this is what's been approved, respect that line. That was the primary discussion. And at that time, the primary discussion was 2 points. Respect that line, because that's what's been approved twice, I think, before, not just once. And second is, we would prefer you not build a Spanish colonial home. That was the guidance, because to not compete with new Spanish colonial architecture with old Spanish colonial architecture. So that was the guidance we'd said, okay, great, well, because she wanted a Spanish colonial home. So, but we listened to the guidance before we set about these plans.
no, I understand that.
Yeah, you were
My
right
only
upon
point
that.
is that you knew you were gonna have to get a cultural heritage permit,
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
which is subjective,
Sure.
unfortunately
Yeah,
for you.
yeah,
But that was known ahead of time.
it was known.
Okay.
So again, just to kind of iterate again, like what John is saying, like those were our kind of design drivers, right? So those were the kind of the two main elements brought into this and coming up with these concepts. And that's that blue line there. So then running through again to give you guys context, because I think that is why we're here, right? Is the visual impact. You can see the different photo keys running through there. So starting from photo 1, highlights the lower historic home, which again doesn't give much to the observer of these historic homes. I would find it hard to see a plaque on this home. Like it's just there, it's completely covered by foliage. So as far
The
as
architecture is amazing.
No one will ever enjoy it. No one.
so photo 1 kind of just highlights the fact that like I don't think there's going to be a visual impact on the house. I cannot see the house from that street already. Then again, photo 2, just to completely paint the context, runs, and again, kind of both give the context, also address issues if I was truly a concerned citizen trying to enjoy that window. Half of that window on photo 2 is taken up by greenery. I then move on to photo 3. Again,
Can I stop you real quick?
yes.
Where was photo 2 taken? Was it
The
taken
green
on
dot.
the green dot?
Yeah.
So photo 2 would be green dot, yeah.
Okay.
And you can see kind of like where it would be even further up than green
Well, plus
dot. But further up from green dot even.
Yeah, I just didn't know where the dot was on that. I guess.
Yeah, it's very
it looked
close
like
to
it's-
photo 2.
It looks like it's the green, but I just want to ask.
You'll see later on I bring in the renders and try and superimpose exactly those views from where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Running through photo 3, again, me being the historic person traveling across the world to view this home, I'm finding it hard to see that window from this point. Again, I don't think that our building will impact that view of that covered window by the landscape. Again, this is just to highlight as well as address its view, also the context of what the historic home next to it is, and in preserving its views from the citizen wanting to enjoy it. That's photo 4. Then photo 5 runs up to the first clear view of what is the front elevation, and what I would say is arguably the elevation that would want to be enjoyed by everyone. I get a clear view from that upper driveway. And then, since intersections is a concern, I'm standing in the intersection and I can't see anything of that home based on the house that is on the adjoining road. That fence obscures the view. The house comes into it as well if we were going towards that initial purple from that initial slide. So you can kind of see that just tracks the views of both the historic home and our site up the road.
Mm-hmm.
Running down then onto the actual site, so I'll just, again, this is all geared towards context. Standing on the site looking down towards the historic home below the property, you can see a tree line that completely obscures the view. There's going to be no view obstruction. We are not impeding on them in any way. There is nothing influencing our building and the experience from the person walking up the street.
From our consideration, moving anything back further obstructs our view to Dana Point. There's zero view to Dana Point Harbor because of that home and its trees.
You mean from further back?
The more you go back,
Right.
yes.
So yeah, and
Almost entirely from the lot, standing on the lot, it's obscured 100%. You cannot see Dana Point Harbor. Now, if you go towards the other side of the lot, where you get elevation towards the Goldsmith home, you start to get those views, but you lose them as you go this way or back.
So again, to bring, yes, we were completely aware of running through this design committee and running it all, but if you had to say, hey, like walking onto that land, where's your value land? It really is up in that upper corner towards the Goldschmidt home. So that's where you're getting your most ocean views. That's where you're getting your views to Dana Point. So like John's saying, like it is obscured. So that is definitely a design notion to try and bring that home further towards that to add value to the home, right? So then running through to the view of the Goldschmidt home, so then looking up towards that, I know there was concerns brought up about its influence on airflow, natural light. It doesn't even come close to half of the height of those trees that are existing there already. It is up against that side yard, but again, zero impact to airflow or light any more than what those trees are already doing to that home on that elevation.
And those trees are all on the neighbor's property, right?
Well, on this view to the Goldsmith home, 100%.
Yes.
On the other one, they jog, I'm not sure which tree, but they kind of jog over.
A lot of that tree line might actually fall on our residence.
On that one.
Yeah, on the lower one.
This one, it's a little bit of a, on the line.
So this one,
But these are
some of
all
them-
their fence line, on the other side of their fence line.
I'm talking about this one here.
That one is there.
That's a jog.
It kind of goes in and out, but there is a large portion of those trees that are sometimes on this property.
Are these protected, these trees?
That's a
Don't
good
see any
question.
oaks.
The
You see any oaks in there?
the direct response would be no. However, they would need to provide additional information if they had concern about protection of those specific trees. There's a
No,
very
talking about if they wanted to chop them down.
yeah, there's a very limited number of properties that have landscaping specifically called out within the historic designation of the property. The DPR form identifies that hedges existed at this property, but they're not a part of the historical description or site plan in the same way that Casa Romantica or other properties had trees identified through a specific survey, like landscaping or gardens identified through a specific survey.
Okay.
So then running down, so then onto the next slide, you'll see that is taking the home and then superimposing it. I've provided both the, obviously it's Photoshop and manipulation to get that onto the site. You can see on the right-hand side, the smaller image is the actual 3D software where we modeled up the historic home to make sure that we were respecting it. And then that's the superimposed image. The larger one is the photograph, taking that 3D model and then putting it on that photograph. This is from that green dot. You'll see that basically from that green dot, the view of that window is not going to be influenced. Anything outside of that green dot down towards the intersection, yes, that will be start obscuring into that window.
Okay, so the image on the right, is that further down, or is that the same?
That's just the same image, basically. I just wanted to
With
show
the
you that that's the
software.
3D software version. Just trying to accurately depict it into that render.
Oh, versus Photoshop.
Exactly. It was just kind of like, hey, like that's the 3D software, that's what it actually writes, and then this is me taking that and kind of making sure that it's looking as best. Again, just to be completely above board, the idea here is that this would look like it is going to look when it's built, right? The idea is not to shade in any way or obscure this.
The software is geographically placed correctly.
Correct. Like all the topography, everything is like exactly the way it should be, but again, this is bringing it just into that photograph. That's from the green dot below. Then this would be from kind of obviously looking at the site again, where you can see both residences. And in both, I've tried to highlight, obviously we've got just the hedging on the left-hand side, so zero impact. And then this is along that view corridor, not imposing the view and not getting in any way like into that elevation. There is a gap. If you zoom in, you can see that it's respecting that view line from the previous approved plans. Then again, running and staring straight on at the site, you can see the home on the left, the trees, and then the home on the right, clearly differentiated, not the same building. They do a good, the landscaping is already completely blocking that view already from that view looking there. Again, not impacting, you can see the height difference between those trees already, so really not impacting or coming close to the height of what those trees are already on that facade. So not impacting the goals.
And this is the landscape that you have proposed to go in with the house.
Correct. Right now, I mean, it's still kind of like it's all low-lying, it's all grass, and this is along the lines of trying to depict exactly what we would have there eventually.
Because that definitely has an impact.
Which
The fact that you're going to landscape, you're
this,
proposing to landscape your property in the front there.
yes.
Okay.
Well, it depends what they landscape it with.
That's what I'm saying, that may come into play here.
Kind of.
And you can see
We're not
that's
going to block it with a wall of hedging.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't
and
block
I'm-
their own view.
Yeah, and
So
you're
this
not
is-
showing that here either, right?
So this is all low grasses. So the idea is that there's all low grasses. There's a couple olives, but again, you know, like you can see, we held them back. The olives, there's no olives in this area here. They sit on this area again to kind of, because of the elevation, this area here is the steepest towards the Hollywood Regency style home. Like it's the foliage is growing higher there in relationship to the already existing trees, and then towards the Goldsmith house, again, there is no proposal to impede their view in any way down towards the ocean or of the people looking at it. Then coming down to that last side again, just to give more context, further up the street, You can see it sitting next to it. No visual impact on it. And then again, the low-lying shrubbery with the already existing landscaping on their property that seems to be obscuring it. The view of that, if I were a historic person wanting to view that, it's already kind of obscured the view of what we are trying to protect, that view of their ocean, or the person looking at their house. Then this gets down to the last slide, and the last slide again, just representing kind of the difference in both the floor plan of the previously approved home with its sightline, as well as the red denotes the amount of hardscape that was actually proposed. We have far less hardscape. It is going to be a far smaller feeding building, although it is still a large building. It is not as large as what was previously approved. Again, just using that as a guideline for our design and knowing what has already been approved through the committee.
Okay, there were some other comments. Did you address any of those, the mechanical equipment or the?
As far as the mechanical
landscaping?
equipment, that's going to definitely be in construction. We will consider that at the point. This presentation was definitely geared towards providing you context and staying within why we're here and the impact of the historic homes. And I suppose this does kind of show you there is no way that they are going to be seeing the tops of those if there are vents or solar panels. It is going to not be a view impeder based on those renderings.
Because the trees are there.
The trees are already there, and the solar panels, no one wants solar panels on their home sticking up high and like sticking in the way. They will be laid flat. We, as a team, typically prefer suggesting even a lower performing solar panel, although they might want you to have this at its upper angle. If it's going to perform 30% less, we suggest providing 30% more solar panels laid flat just to keep, we wouldn't want and they wouldn't want any solar panels sticking up to impede the view for anyone or for their house. So that mechanical and that construction is definitely going to be kept clean and neat.
All right. Sir, did you have anything else you want to add?
No, thanks for letting me.
Okay. So I'm sure some people here are here for this particular project. And I would ask that if there's nothing new, that maybe just one of you, give your position, so that we don't have to, spend a huge amount of time. I think, the design hasn't changed. So I'm guessing that your positions on the project haven't changed either. Is that correct?
I just had, Paul.
I'm gonna let somebody
I just
speak,
had a
but,
quick question.
okay.
So it didn't get answered last time, and I'm hoping that it will get answered this time. So you mentioned that the setback currently for the new project is, I'm assuming at this point here
Correct.
to here, correct? So it's not taking into account the front porch and the stairs?
No,
Okay. And then with the number and that's 45 feet?
correct.
And then the number I heard before last time was 52 or 4, I forget. And when I'm looking at this building, I'm trying to figure out where they took their measurement from, because that doesn't seem to be correct. Because clearly this point and that point are equal, they're not different. So I'm just wondering if this is actually the position or if they just took a measurement somewhere else.
As far as like what they're talking about their setback,
So was it not, am I wrong? Was it 52, 54? What was it?
Do you have a record?
I can find, yeah. I can
Somebody
get
tell
the
me,
record.
but anyway, this is obviously the same point.
Mhm.
So if you're measuring from that corner and it's 45 feet, and they're measuring from that corner, which is the closest, and it's 50-something feet, then obviously it's not the same.
I know that number was definitely thrown around. I haven't seen officially a number of where it was sitting at the setback.
Yeah.
Again, because I mean, like
I
when
thought it was you guys that threw, somebody said it was 50-something feet originally.
no, I know in discussions with the neighbors, they had brought up a 54-foot number. I haven't seen that on any of the Romney, and I can pull up the old Romney. I mean, if you're going to find
It
it.
would
I
be
mean,
nice
so,
to know where that measurement was taken from originally.
Well, and it was mentioned in our meeting.
yeah, it was
Last
definitely
time.
mentioned.
So I think, I don't know if you can do that right now.
Wouldn't what seems to me, and I wasn't here last time, but what seems to me more important than the setback distance itself is encroachment over the view line.
Well, let's let the public speak first, and we can
Okay.
get into that with our,
Okay,
is that okay?
absolutely,
Yeah, do our discussion.
absolutely.
And again, if it's a reiteration of what we heard last time, we're happy to hear that, but maybe just one person could express.
I'll go. I'm Catherine Hall, and my husband and I live next door at 243 in the Goldschmidt House. As you probably know, this is from 1928. The Goldschmidt family originally owned most of what became the Spanish Village by the Sea. They owned actually from the ocean to the Mission with a partner. They divided it right behind my house. The partner kept the inland side. And then the Goldschmidt family sold their part of the property to Cotton, and they retained our lot and actually the subject lot, the next door lot, for their home. The subject lot was later sold to the Campbell House. Our home was building permit number 14 for the city and was designed by the renowned architect Paul Revere Williams. Beyond being a San Clemente historical resource, it is one of only 6 San Clemente buildings on the National Historic Register and is the only private residence with that designation. We believe this combination of facts and history makes our home historically, culturally, and architecturally significant. As we mentioned, all the objections that we raised at the first meeting remain. The proposal has not changed, and I'm not going to go into all of the things in their materials. Our primary objection remains the massing and the location of this project forward on the lot. We are also concerned about the overall appearance from our property, as we mentioned in the last meeting. We do have upstairs views from the back that we look over this property, so skylights and all that stuff is a concern. Air conditioning, vents, whatever, those concerns. The historic homes on both sides are set back, meaning the proposed forward position makes this new development dominant from the street. If you draw a line connecting the two historic homes, you can see that this development is much forward. As you know, the city's design guidelines call for new developments to be compatible with and respectful of historic resources. The general plan actually requires that the scale and massing of development be compatible with its surroundings. This proposed project does not comply with these guidelines and requirements. As proposed, we feel it will dwarf the neighboring historic properties as views from the front. And I would, as a side note, the photographs that were taken were showing the worst possible things. And I would like to point out that some of the overgrown landscaping from our property is laying onto the neighboring lot. And we can no longer trim those things because it's marked no trespassing, gated, whatever. While I will not take up each of the issues raised in the applicant and designer responses, I would like to take the time to address the issue raised regarding lack of enforcement of view restrictions on 101 Calle Seguro. Calle Seguro is a cul-de-sac of 4 homes immediately east of our home. The 4 lots and Center Place Street were created from 2 large lots similar to those on Avenida La Cuesta. This subdivision happened in the early 60s. The home next to the front of the Goldschmidt House at 101 Calle Seguro was built in 1973. The home behind it was built in the early 60s. The early 70s was a time when damage to historic resources in San Clemente led to the founding of the Historical Society in 1973. The imposition and lack of view restriction is exactly why we need to prohibit the same imposition from the Moses property. Not caring about historic resources led not only to the Historical Society, but to changes in development guidelines and requirements. Rather than an argument against view restrictions, This example is exactly why we will continue to fight to protect the view of the Goldschmidt House. We feel it is our duty to protect this home and encourage the application of city design guidelines. One last remark. It was argued that the view of the Goldschmidt House is only from the intersection down the street. If you know where to look, the Goldschmidt House can be viewed from many places around town. If you are not driving, and if traffic is slow, you can see it from the freeway. It is also visible from various places on the other side of the freeway, including Avenida de la Estrella and Avenida Los Flores. It is even visible from the outlets. Thank you for your time. I ask that you please seek a more compatible and respectful project that is set back further from the street.
Thank you. So, one of the comments you made here,
Committee Chairman, can we have I'm going to concur with the remarks. I'm their legal representative, the two property owners, but I do have Henry Lenny on the phone, and he'd like to make some comments and remarks. Would you give him that opportunity?
I assume it'll be the same that we heard.
No, it'll be new.
He has new information?
He does.
Okay, but before we...
Hang on, Henry. We're trying to get the green light.
Okay.
Well, let me just ask a question about your comments. So you're also concerned about the view through those trees to this new property. You said looking towards the property.
The picture is misleading. Those trees are close to the house. They do not go all the way down the back. And our house has a large deck upstairs that looks out over the property.
Well, it's a bit, if I could just make one comment, to supplement what you said, it's a bit rich to point out that the landscaping in the front along our property is overgrown and distasteful and obscuring the view of our home now. All of the landscaping that's obscuring the view of our home now is on their property. We've had surveys of our property boundaries, and all of that landscaping lies in 239 Avenida La Cuesta. It's now locked off. We can't maintain it, but eventually it's going to have to be addressed by the property owner.
Is that true?
How many people go to their neighbor's house to do the maintenance of their landscaping?
Well, let me just ask, is that a true statement? That
He asked me.
he says all that landscape is on your property.
No, none of it is.
Is that what you're saying?
Not all of it, but it has
Zero
gotten
it is.
overgrown in their direction.
Trees, you can see in the picture, just because trees are growing into the air on my side and they can't trim that, doesn't mean they can't take care of their landscaping.
Okay, well, we're not getting into that.
But I'm just
I was
saying, I no one saying complaining of people going to neighbors' houses and doing their yard work. That's not normal.
Yeah, I tried to get my neighbor to do that.
Okay.
He wouldn't do it for me. Okay, we have a little bit of a contradiction here as far as the landscape. We can get into that. Why don't we? Can
I just suggest something? If someone doesn't want a house next door, they can buy the property, right? Correct? I mean, if they're complaining about being able to view into my backyard, is what she said from a balcony. So, but no one has the luxury of not having a neighbor next door unless they decide.
Yeah, we
to
don't
buy
want to get it. Yeah, we don't want to get into
Okay,
that.
but it's just it's nonsensical.
Okay, this is not going to be a debate
Yeah.
between neighbors. It's going to be a discussion about the appropriateness of the design. So we don't want it to sort of drop into that level. We're just here to provide input
Yeah. Well, they
to help you to get the.
That's what they're suggesting is the backyard.
I understand, and we just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
So, and Henry, can we keep it to like 3 to 5 minutes? That'd be
Henry,
great.
you're up. Go for it. Go ahead, Henry, you're on.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much for letting me talk. I do want to respond to the issue of compatibility, putting a contemporary building next to historic buildings. That's not the definition of compatibility. Landscaping. If you really want to see an example of what happens to a neighborhood when the landscaping is gone, it's actually devastating. I would invite you to come to Montecito after the fires. I don't even know what street I'm in. Trees are organic and they will die or they will catch a bug and so on and so forth. I'm not going to talk about the style or the specifics of the style. At this point in time, I vehemently disagree with the definition of compatibility by putting a contemporary building. Even though you may set it back 6 feet, that is not the issue. The issue is setting a precedent for the city. If the owners of this house can see the ocean, believe me, someone from the ocean can see their house. And pretty soon, this whole thing begins to go back to the mistakes of the past that San Clemente had. San Clemente has always had a consensus with not only the people that live in San Clemente, but some of the visitors. In the previous discussion of signage, it is what the process is. It is what the people want. And of course, the property owners have property rights, and I fully respect that and endorse that. But again, to summarize, there is nothing compatible about this house anywhere in the city. A house makes a neighborhood makes the city. And many years ago, back in the 20s, the city decided to. Hello?
We can hear you.
You're there, Henry.
You can still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, my only new comment here is that San Clemente has been developed and fixed from some of the blemishes of the past by the citizens. And the sign presentation that was done previously, that is exactly the process that we should go through, whether the city's in the historic district or whether it's up in the hills. And so that is my review. So I am disappointed that the applicant did not make absolutely any effort to at least compromise or come up with an alternate solution that addresses what is being taught or what is being talked about from the community, and not only the neighbors, but the community as a whole. Anyway, that is my presentation, and I really appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Henry.
Thanks, Henry. Okay, so,
May I comment?
yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, as Henry was just saying, I too am really shocked that the architect didn't come back, Moses didn't come back with some little bit of give. Instead, they came back with being rather nasty toward the Goldschmidt house, accusing them of being weedy. It seemed unprofessional to me. I looked first at which recommendations you made. You had a nice list of what you expected from them. You asked for renderings. You said the renderings only include the resident without the historic residences. I didn't see that. They didn't come back with that. You said that you needed more exhibits. They should be provided to better communicate the project surrounding context. I didn't see that.
Did you see
Give me anything.
Did you see the packet that we were looking at?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And on the compatibility, they did a study on that previous one. I haven't heard you talk about that. They showed pictures of 29 different houses around the neighborhood. Nothing looks anywhere near as, what do you call it, ultra-modern as that? I mean, when you drive up the street, instead of your eye being drawn to the Goldschmidt house, you can look at this ultra-modern thing. It's just completely incompatible with the neighborhood. So I think it needs to be pushed back and toned down in style.
Okay. Thanks, Larry. Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, let's get going on our discussion here. Scott, you want to start us off? You weren't here last time,
I was.
nothing's changed anyways.
Yeah, I will say that I have reviewed the plans. I've reviewed the plans that were submitted last time. I actually live in the general neighborhood. I don't live within a radius that would preclude me from voting on it. But I go through this intersection probably 6 times a day. I walk past 243 and the vacant lot frequently. Your house is beautiful. It's spectacularly beautiful.
We agree.
I think your design is beautiful as well. Regarding setback, the setback, whether it's 45 or 52 or whatever, I don't see that as an issue as opposed to the view line that was established with, sounds like 2 prior approvals on the Romney House. It seems to me that the applicant has respected that. And I actually agree with the city's comment to don't do a Spanish style house to try and, faux compete with your original historic house. So to me, and a big part of it is lot size, because the lots are big and there's space. I mean, there was a comparison made to say, well, the house next door, I think it's 233, the average of the setbacks. I mean, 233, you can't even see it. Like, I've lived there forever. It's a jungle. You don't even know what's back there. You have no idea. So I think they've respected it. I think it's compatible. That's my feeling.
Okay.
I do think, though, that, I'm sorry, I made a note. There was apparently discussion of the rooftop items and utilities, and I think that maybe that should be better addressed, because that seems to have been ignored. I personally don't have any issue with skylights. I think skylights are great, and they're great for Title 24. But there's probably things that can be done to put condensers and things down in the landscaping. I don't know what vents are being talked about, but there's really stealthy vents that can be employed. So I do think that some conditions should be imposed relative to those comments.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Cameron?
I just wanted to ask Jonathan, would you agree with the applicant that they relied upon city staff direction for the sight line you have to be behind, and that they cannot duplicate a Spanish colonial style, and that they need to come up with something different? Sounds like they relied on that. Is that right?
So, part one on the line of sight, yes, the primary focus when Planning Commission and Design Review previously looked at the Romney residence submittal was a line of sight study.
When was that? Do you know
That
off the
was,
top of your head?
yeah, it went before the commission in 2018, June of 2018.
Okay, so that was before all 3 of us were on there then.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. And then as far as the other item, that was a component of the conversation. Compatibility is primarily going to be size, scale, and setting. And so I think Henry's comments are very valid in terms of landscaping. I think that we do see consistency here of kind of an estate style neighborhood. I would disagree on the architectural component of that. The normative placement of how do you differentiate and in the context of compatibility is not typically going to be a requirement of the same architectural style. Could they get approval from from the city for Spanish colonial? They also could. And so I think there's a matter of preference, which stands out more clearly as a differentiator between what's historic and what's not, especially from a distance from the street, would probably be a non-Spanish colonial. So I think that's where the staff and prior discussions why it had landed in that space.
So you agree then that doing this different style is what they were told to do?
I would agree that seems, I wasn't in those conversations, but
Yeah,
I
know, I'm putting you on the
imagine
spot.
that is consistent with feedback that I would have given in the type of construction to consider.
Okay. Okay. And then what are your feelings about the massing of the home itself as it relates to the 243? The other one, it's not really in play here. It's the Goldsmith house. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. So this is going to be the area where the Planning Commission has, I think, the most burden for compatibility
Mhm.
consideration. The property at 243 does have two-story elements. Not all of it is two-story. I think the component that does come into play here, and that staff has looked at as well, is the grade differential. So the 243 property does already have an element of preeminence by being at a higher grade. So even the single-story element does sit at a higher location. Those things are taken into account. And so I think that given that the higher elevation is in place, and given that there are two-story elements in place, I don't see that there are significant issues with the massing in the adjacent context that's here. I think that one of the things that we typically will try to do is make sure that there's variation as well, and where we have differentiation in the facades, not just like the heights, but the offsets of the front building walls as well. And again, these are going to be the primary things I think that fall into a good compatibility discussion. But this is not the context of a glaring issue like we see obviously regularly at Casa Romantica next to enormous condo buildings, right? So in this case, it's going to be more nuanced. But we do have a two-story residence next to a property at a higher elevation that has two-story elements. It's not fully a two-story property, but has two-story elements.
Okay, that's helpful, thanks. Did you consider any alternatives and reject them for some reason?
As far as?
Your massing or your setback location, did you play with moving it around at all?
Definitely, but again, I think it just goes back to kind of the value of that property, and where we would say the value of that property in its maximizing of the views and getting that ocean view and trying to attain some of that view of Dana Point is definitely that higher point up in that corner. It is also the highest elevation on the lot, and then that is why we brought the massing up here to kind of, it plays in line with the grade of the natural topography. So if we were to come and make an abrasive two-story element on the side where the garage is right now, we can't actually do that. So per the city code, the height limit is taken from natural grade. So we would have to either build out or build down, and that would be more jarring to this natural slope. So we try to take the natural slope down, bring the massing up to this, and then stagger it down with the natural grade. So now that's why you have the single story element, which is the garage, and then you have the massing sitting higher up to the higher elevation. Again, like what John had highlighted, there's single story elements, but that house is actually significantly higher than the elevation of the proposed home below. So that helps with its massing. So the more mass is definitely, if I'm looking at the site, on the right-hand side.
So it looks like the orange dot and your line there, which is helpful that you did that. It looks like it's hitting this corner right by is that to you're facing it to the right of the front door? This corner?
The corner of the blue line or the corner
The orange line.
Which diagram are we looking at? That one? Okay, so that's right now that orange line.
So that would be here, this corner right here?
Yeah, it'd be cutting through basically where that is all staggering and take off all the staggers.
What is that part of the home? What is that?
That right now is the entry as well as
It's the entry and bath.
Yeah, the entry on the lower floor and then on the upper floor.
I mean, do you have like this rectangle pergola thing coming from the front door? Is that what I'm figuring? What is that?
The
right
entry,
here. What is this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the front door, and then that's the entry pergola. So that entry pergola.
That's what I was asking. Yeah.
Correct. The entry pergola sits in between both the red and the blue.
And what's the function of that?
Denotes entry, but that would definitely be something that we could start playing around with if that is. And if you zoom in onto the renders, that would definitely be something that is. Right now it is just saying entry, but if you're saying hey, can we play around with that?
Yes,
that would definitely be an area
yes.
that could be manipulated.
I think
I would be curious, Cameron, if they did, because that's a single story, it's a lower element.
Yes.
If that would even
Have a
impact.
factor.
Exactly.
Gotcha, okay.
I don't know.
No, yeah.
But I think that's a good question.
Yeah, can you come, when you come, is this going to the planning commission?
Yes.
Okay. So when you come to that group, can you please speak to whether or not that element is in the view line of the home or not?
So
And if it is, what are you prepared to alter it? If it's not, then I
So
think
it's-
what you're saying, Scott, is then it doesn't matter.
so that's it right there.
Got it.
That is
Okay.
the view. That is the pergola.
So it's,
It does not obscure that view. Nothing in a vertical plane outside of the hardscape is within that view corridor.
but that's taken from the blue dot perspective or the green dot perspective?
The blue dot, the one.
I'm sorry, I said blue, but it's green.
The
It's green
green.
or orange.
Correct,
Okay.
the green.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking you if you looked at it from the orange.
That would definitely be in play into that elevation from the
Okay.
orange.
So maybe you can, so if that pergola is part of the obstruction coming up the street, to me, that's one of the that's not changing the function of the home. It's an architectural feature. And if that feature can be changed, lowered, reduced to make for a resolution to this issue, you should do that.
Okay. Cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's my comment.
Okay.
Thanks.
No, I think that's helpful because it sort of leads into, my comment, my primary comment, which is, I think we really need to see the landscape design. I'm not seeing any, I get, I get the reason why you didn't, I was thinking about this during this last week. The reason you didn't make any changes, because you did provide the context. It's in the package, I don't know if you saw it, Larry, but there are renderings that show the residence next door, both of them, which no surprises, I don't think, in terms of, the lower property that's completely obscured, 233, but 243, I think it's very helpful. This is a tough one here because what we're really looking at is the impact on the historic residents, right? And you could probably debate, are we creating more of an impact by having a completely different style of the home or less of an impact? And I think there's a pretty good argument that there's less of an impact, especially when you see the two homes right next to each other. To me, these renderings really help the historic residents to stand out more.
Yeah.
Especially, really any of them, but, the image here, clearly that's the historic residence.
Yep.
I mean, there's no question, and that was why I wanted to see these renderings. I think they're very helpful.
Yeah, in fact, to your point here, Steve, the modern house with the fact that it's got a flat level element to it, it almost doesn't stand out. There's no peaks, there's no
And the coloring of it too.
There's no pitch.
Yes,
Yeah,
but-
the coloring of it, it
Right.
almost blends into it blends in, and I think the historical house almost pops. I mean, I could think of a hip roof and a bunch of other roof styles that would actually compete. This does not, and I almost think this is a kind of a good scenario for the Goldsmith House to not be competing that way.
David Carrillo was very adamant that if we build a Spanish colonial home, that
Yes.
was very modern or new architecture or whatever, that we would be coming to this committee and it would be very difficult,
There'll be a lot of conflict there.
lots of conflict.
Yeah.
And he said
You relied upon that, that's what I'm hearing. And I
he
think-
wanted this to stand alone, the White House stand alone.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at this image, especially, let me see if there's another one. Yeah, I mean, if you just kind of squint your eyes, the home that you're proposing seems to blend in
Yeah.
with that property, and it really highlights the historic building.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really even notice the modern home as much, especially because of There's a layering that's occurring both vertically and horizontally. It steps with the grade, because the grade steps up in that direction. I think it's an appropriate design for that property. The concern that we've been hearing, and we heard this from you, Larry, today, is, the neighborhood. Is this contemporary home super modern, as you call it? Which I don't see as super modern. To me, super modern is glass and steel and very stark. This is not a
bright
stark.
white competing with the bright white.
Yeah, this is not a stark home. I mean, there's earth colors, there's a layering that I think works. My big concern, and Henry mentioned it, is the landscape. I think we have to see a landscape design that connects with both properties. And I'm not talking about a wall, I'm talking about landscape materials. And this actually is not bad, what you've shown here. I know it's just...
Because it's low.
Yeah, it's low, but at least there's a consistency with the design and the power. It's the thing that I notice in that neighborhood a lot, no good landscapes, other than your property and the one, the other historic residents. And I think that you can really go a long way to getting the Planning Commission to buy into this. If you hire a good landscape architect, I'm not telling you to spend a bunch of money, but somebody that's good, and have a dialogue between the landscape and the home. And even though I kind of like the pergola, I think that could be accomplished with landscape. You could set up that sort of transition. And I understand what you're doing. You're signaling the entry. You want it to be clear from the street. But maybe that's not as important on this home, especially in that location. So, I get, like, on a lot of homes, it's like, well, where's the front door, right?
Yeah, you kind of.
But in this home, because you are set back 45 feet, I think we want to see some good landscaping. Maybe there's a little bit more of a mystery, kind of like some of these Frank Lloyd Wright homes, where you have to kind of go around the side and, here's the
I think it's
entry.
clear from the photos where the door is. That's how that it's darker. It's got an ornament on it. I think it's pretty clear that's the door.
Yeah,
I don't think you need a path.
I think we
you need
want
a
to
path
see,
to it.
a little more detail in terms of the mechanical, the venting. I mean, there are ways to, sort of connect all those and have them come up in one location. It's a very clean design, and it's blending into potentially to the landscape and to the site. It's, I think, setting up as a foil for the historic residents, but I think it needs to be very elegantly done. And the nuances are going to be important. And so we want to see that kind of stuff. I'm inclined to recommend, and we're not approving it. You guys know that, right?
Definitely.
We just make a recommendation to the Planning Commission, of which the three of us sit on that, but there's also four other
people
members. So I'm inclined to say, assuming we can get those details, the landscape, you can take a look at that pergola element. We're inclined to send it on to the Planning Commission with a positive recommendation.
But with the suggestion that they provide significantly more detail on landscaping,
right,
and relative to the rooftop
The
elements.
rooftop elements for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to spare money to do that right. We're not going to ruin the design of the neighborhood like that. I agree
Okay,
with you 100%.
so bring that information
Yeah.
to the planning commission, actually in advance of the planning commission, so we can review it
Perfect.
before.
Last thing I want is to build this house and have stuff sticking out the top.
Yeah.
So
No, we understand.
Yeah, it ruins the profile.
yeah.
But that takes planning to do that properly. So that's what we're asking.
And in your summary, no one said address a pergola, and that's my number one thing. that
So
I
the
think,
pergola, landscaping, mechanical on the top.
Yeah.
The one question I have with the landscaping, when it comes to kind of a dialogue between the two, are you looking for, because I'd say like a lot of our homes typically run towards the kind of soft grasses, which is suggested here. So kind of you see the swaying in the wind, but it is a very monotone palette. So it runs with a very, like, this would be like a Cassian, dwarf Cassian, which means that they don't get big, they stay small, they stay low, but you ultimately see it blowing in the wind. If I could compare it to anything, like we've done a couple homes around the town that have that kind of like just swaying soft, and then it, again to stick with the earth tone and blending in the accents coming through with the olive trees kind of coming through that in a vertical. Is there a between the two? There's obviously an arid kind of drought tolerant landscaping with the Goldschmidt, and then kind of you've got the kind of subtropical with the podocarpus wrapping around on the left. Is there more than what these grasses? Would you want something denotated, like as far as entry?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to need to address what's going on. So you can get color, for instance, using the drought-tolerant materials, the spiky landscapes, and then it'll connect more.
So bring in more of that drought tolerant to kind of fuse between the two, so it kind of blends
don't the problem with typical landscapes is that they're a fruit cocktail.
Yeah.
So that's not what we're looking for.
No.
Something that's homogeneous.
But do you want it to be an extension of the Goldschmidt?
That's what I was wondering.
I think there can be there's enough space there's enough frontage that you can deal with it on the edges, and you can transition into a landscape that's.
There's a very stark separation here. I mean, there's a dividing line.
Well, right now there is.
Yeah.
But what the suggestion is that it doesn't.
Blends together.
It could blend together.
Okay.
And you can still maintain the contrast between the homes in terms of the way they look and the view from important locations.
Would you be recommending a height limitation in the view corridor from the Goldsmith home?
For the plants?
For the landscaping?
Well, the view corridor, what is that? I mean, is it the ocean? Is it?
It's every ability to see everything.
The large arched window that's been a concern for this project from day one. So landscape height limitation.
Yeah, I don't think we're suggesting any additional reduction in the height.
No, they're saying,
the landscape.
well, we make a recommendation
for the landscape.
that there's no tall trees in the yellow area.
Can I put that rule on the guy next to me?
Not retroactive.
Cascade it down?
Look, what we're suggesting is that we want to look at the landscape, and that's important. You're asking about the landscape itself?
Now, if I have a 40-foot podocarpus row there, would I have any?
Yeah, I don't think they're interested in doing that because that's going to block their view.
Well, the plans showed olive trees, which get 30 feet high.
Multi-fruitless olives are not going to get.
I know I, for one, will be sensitive to that, but we want them to make suggestions, and then we'll see what those suggestions are. But we might have something to say about that if they are proposing a bunch of tall
I
stuff.
think we're suggesting it needs to be a part of the
The
design.
question is, will there be conditions of approval that say they cannot, or some subsequent owner cannot plant something?
Well, the plan commission is when we'll do that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, not here.
Oh, yeah. Potentially, there will be, you guys know that.
Yeah.
There will be conditions at the planning commission level.
If I could just real quick comment on that too. So anytime that there's an approved entitlement for any property in the city and there's a future owner that wants to change those things, staff will always go back and look at those entitlements. And so we reference the landscape plan, and if someone is proposing something significantly tall when that's out of character with the landscape plan that was there, we wouldn't approve that administratively. We'd say you can still request that. Property owners has a right to request that, but you need to go back to a public hearing to request that if there's significant changes.
Okay. All right, is that good input? You guys? Okay.
Thank you so much.
So do we
Thanks,
need to make
everybody.
Do we need to make a motion to recommend it go to planning commission or?
Yeah, no motions are required.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
As you know, I've been in historical study for years, and to me, I'm sorry, have any of you been in their house? Have you been in your
I've never been invited.
I didn't get that.
You need to go in.
There's knock on the door.
You need to go in and see out of their living room, look over your window there, and see, it's magnificent. And the architect who built that did it for a reason, not for somebody to be building into their view. And I'm sorry, this looks awful. It looks like, it takes away from the beautiful Goldschmidt house. I'm sorry, it's just,
But we appreciate your opinion. I mean, that's,
It's just, if that happens, I don't know what's gonna be Subcommittee, so.
The architect named the home Trace Vistas. And one of those vistas is what we're talking about here today, which is going to be impacted in a great degree by this development.
Divide mountains.
We're not blocking it.
Yes, you are.
okay,
Thank you so much.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Well, we still got it.
Yes, that was actually on their agenda today.
That's what they approved at the beginning, February 21.
So, actually, no, that's what was signed today. So it was on the agenda previously, but he,
Scott, any new
did
business?
not get the signed version.
I'm ready to adjourn.
For February 21.
But, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, wait, no, so this was February 14th.
That's last time. Appreciate it. You guys do a
This
good
was
job.
why I said, I went online to.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
They weren't.
Yeah, so they were
Okay.
approved on a prior
Any
agenda,
old-
but the signed version.
Old business,
did
any
not
old
get to,
business.
that's why they're not online. So the signed
Earl
version
and-
today.
I got
I'll get the signed version.
I resent it.
Remove that.
it. Very good.
No oral or
You're
written,
certainly welcome.
Jonathan, no oral or written communication for us today?
No, not for today.
Okay, do I have a motion for adjournment? Scott, I think you're,
I'll move adjournment.
okay. I'll second it.
Great, I vote for it.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning?
Yes.
Aye.
We
We are,
have, this is,
Forward.
Yeah.
I think we've closed, right?
yeah, we're adjourned.